The Grand Conclave Station floated in the darkness between stars, a massive ring of metal and glass that had witnessed 1,000 diplomatic meetings. Today, it would host the most important one in galactic history. 47 alien civilizations had sent their representatives to sign the Universal Concordat, a peace treaty that promised to end centuries of border wars and bring order to the galaxy. Commander Lisa Morgan stood near the back of the observation deck, watching the delegates file into the main chamber. She wore her Terran Defense Force uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and felt completely out of place. Earth had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago. Humanity was still learning the rules, still trying to understand politics that had existed for millennia before humans even invented the wheel. She was not here to vote. Earth did not have that power yet. She was an observer, nothing more. Her job was to watch, to learn, and to report back to President Helen Carter what she saw. Lisa took her assignment seriously. She had spent the last 3 months reading every page of the treaty, all 6,000 pages of it, translated into standard galactic and then into English. The main chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate species of every shape and size. The Vaxari delegation occupied the eastern section, their crystalline bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns across the walls. The Solinth Empire sat in the place of honor at the center, their gray skin and forearms moving in practiced diplomatic gestures. The Krell Dominion positioned themselves near the speakers, their insectoid features unreadable, but their technology visibly superior to everyone else in the room. Ambassador Torin of the Vaxari began the ceremony. His voice resonated through translation devices that rendered his crystalline speech into dozens of languages simultaneously. Today we end the age of conflict. Today we choose peace over war, cooperation over competition, unity over division. The chamber erupted in approval. Representatives from dozens of species stood and expressed their agreement in their own ways. Some clapped, some hummed, some flashed lights from their bodies. Lisa stayed quiet, her hands folded behind her back, her mind racing through the clauses she had memorized. The treaty looked beautiful on the surface. Mutual defense agreements, shared technology, open borders for trade and cultural exchange, economic cooperation to lift up developing worlds. Who could oppose such things? But Lisa had read the appendices. She had studied the fine print that most delegates seemed to ignore. Article 47 required all military research to be submitted to a central authority for approval before implementation. Article 63 established population monitoring systems that would be controlled by the 3 major powers. Article 91 created trade routes that forced smaller civilizations to sell their resources at fixed prices to larger ones. She had brought her concerns to the other human diplomats 3 weeks ago. They had dismissed her. "We are too new to understand the complexities," they said. "The major powers have been doing this for thousands of years. They know what they are doing." Lisa had then tried to speak with representatives from smaller civilizations, species like Earth that had recently joined the galactic community. Most refused to meet with her. Those who did seemed afraid, glancing over their shoulders as if someone might be watching. One ambassador from a species called the Netharii had whispered to her in a corridor, "We know what you know, but we cannot speak against the treaty. They will punish us." Now the signing ceremony was beginning. A holographic display materialized at the center of the chamber, showing the treaty in its entirety, written in every major galactic language. One by one, the delegates approached and placed their mark on the document. The Vaxari signed first, their ambassador touching the hologram with a crystalline hand that left a glowing imprint. The Solinth followed, their leader using all 4 arms to create an elaborate signature. The Krell Dominion added their mark with mechanical precision. Smaller species signed in groups, their ambassadors standing together as if there was safety in numbers. The chamber filled with the sound of celebration. Music played, though Lisa could not identify the instruments. Lights danced across the walls. This was supposed to be the greatest moment in galactic history. "Terran delegation, please approach," the ceremonial director announced. Lisa felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her. She walked forward slowly, her boots clicking against the polished floor. The holographic treaty floated before her, waiting for her mark. All she had to do was reach out and touch it. Earth would be part of the new galactic order. Humanity would have the protection of the major powers, access to their trade networks, the chance to finally be accepted as equals. She looked at the treaty. She saw Article 47, Article 63, Article 91. She saw all the hidden clauses that would slowly strip Earth of its freedom, its autonomy, its ability to determine its own future. Lisa stepped back from the hologram. "I cannot sign this treaty," she said clearly. The chamber went silent. The music stopped. The lights froze in place. For a moment, Lisa thought she had not spoken loudly enough, that her translator had malfunctioned. Then Ambassador Torin rose from his seat. "Did you say you cannot sign?" His voice carried disbelief and anger in equal measure. "That is correct," Lisa replied. She kept her voice steady, even though her heart was pounding. "Earth cannot agree to these terms." The Solinth delegate stood, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture Lisa had learned meant extreme displeasure. "Humanity dares to reject galactic peace? You would rather have war?" "I would rather have honest peace," Lisa said. She pulled up her datapad and projected its contents onto the main display. Article 47 gives the Central Authority complete control over military development. Article 63 allows external monitoring of population centers without local consent. Article 91 establishes trade terms that favor the major powers while exploiting smaller civilizations. Those articles ensure stability. The Krell ambassador said, his mechanical voice cold and precise. "Your species lacks the experience to understand galactic security." "My species understands freedom," Lisa countered. "These clauses do not create peace. They create submission." The chamber erupted into chaos. Dozens of delegates shouted at once, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Some species demanded Earth be punished for this insult. Others called for Lisa to be removed from the chamber. A few delegates sat quietly, their expressions thoughtful, but they did not speak. Ambassador Torin raised his crystalline arms and the chamber slowly quieted. "Commander Morgan, do you understand what you have done? Earth is young, weak, and alone. You need the protection this treaty offers. Without it, you have nothing." Lisa met his gaze without flinching. "Then we will stand with nothing rather than kneel with everything." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the delegates descended into arguments and accusations. Some species demanded the treaty move forward without Earth. Others worried about what this rejection meant. The Nethari ambassador watched Lisa leave with something that looked like hope in his reptilian eyes. When Lisa reached her ship, she found a priority message waiting from President Carter. It contained only 3 words: "Come home immediately." The journey back to Earth took 6 days. Lisa spent most of that time preparing her report and expecting to be court-martialed the moment she arrived. She had acted without authorization. She had embarrassed Earth in front of the entire galaxy. She had possibly started a conflict humanity could not win. But when her ship entered Earth's orbit and she was escorted to the presidential office, Helen Carter did not look angry. She looked determined. "Tell me everything," the president said, "and do not leave out a single detail." Lisa spent 4 hours explaining every clause, every hidden trap, every consequence she could foresee. President Carter listened without interrupting, her fingers steepled under her chin, her eyes never leaving Lisa's face. When Lisa finished, the president stood and walked to the window overlooking the capital city below. "The Vaxari ambassador contacted me 3 hours ago," Carter said quietly. "He gave us 48 hours to disavow your actions and sign the treaty. He said if we do not comply, Earth will face economic sanctions and military pressure." "I understand, Madam President," Lisa replied. "I will accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate." Carter turned around, and to Lisa's surprise, she was smiling. "Commander, you did exactly what I would have done. But now we need to decide what Earth does next." Within hours, Carter had called an emergency session of the Terran Assembly. Representatives from every nation and colony gathered in the Great Hall. The debate lasted 3 days. Lisa testified before them, displaying the treaty clauses on massive screens, explaining how similar agreements in galactic history had destroyed the independence of younger civilizations. The assembly chamber became a battleground of ideas. Senator Paul Grant from the North American Federation argued that Earth could not survive alone against the major powers. "We have been in space for less than 50 years. They have been traveling the stars for millennia. We need their protection, their technology, their trade networks." Governor Maria Santos from the Mars colony disagreed. "My grandparents came to Mars to build something new, something free. They did not travel 40 million miles to surrender our freedom to aliens who hide their true intentions in legal documents." Outside the assembly, the debate raged across human space. News networks showed footage from past galactic conflicts, of worlds burning, of species nearly wiped out in wars that lasted centuries. Commentators asked if Earth wanted to be responsible for restarting such violence. But something unexpected began to happen. Regular citizens started reading the treaty themselves. Universities formed study groups to analyze the clauses. Legal scholars published papers highlighting the concerning sections. Scientists noted that the technology-sharing provisions were one-sided, requiring Earth to give up its research while receiving only approved information in return. A professor named Dr. Benjamin Cole at Oxford University made a presentation that went viral across human networks. He compared the Universal Concordat to historical treaties on Earth, where powerful nations had used complex legal language to colonize weaker ones. "The words are different," he said, "but the pattern is identical. This is not peace. This is conquest with a signature." Meanwhile, the alien ambassadors on Earth launched their own campaign. The Vaxari representative appeared on every major news channel, his crystalline form glowing with righteous anger. Humanity chooses war over peace. They endanger the entire galaxy with their arrogance and inexperience. The Solanth ambassador was more subtle, meeting privately with business leaders and promising lucrative trade deals if Earth would just sign. "Think of the profits," he told them. "Think of the technology we could share. All we ask is your cooperation." The Krell Dominion took a different approach. They released detailed military assessments showing how quickly they could defeat Earth's defenses if war began. The message was clear: sign the treaty or face destruction. But the pressure campaign had an unexpected effect. The more the major powers threatened, the more humanity's pride awakened. People who had been uncertain about Lisa's decision began to support her. The phrase "freedom over fear" appeared on signs at rallies across Earth and its colonies. Musicians wrote songs about standing alone. Artists created images of Earth facing down the galaxy without backing down. On the third day of debate, President Carter addressed the Terran Assembly directly. "I have reviewed the treaty. I have consulted with experts from every field. I have listened to the voices of our people, and I have made my decision." The chamber fell silent. Every representative leaned forward. Across human space, billions watched their screens, waiting. "Earth will not sign the Universal Concordat," Carter declared. "We reject any treaty that requires us to surrender our sovereignty, our freedom, or our ability to determine our own future." Half the chamber erupted in applause. The other half sat in stunned silence, already calculating the consequences. But Carter was not finished. "However, we will not simply reject and walk away. We will offer an alternative. We will draft a new treaty, one without hidden clauses, without forced submission, without the surrender of autonomy. We will create an agreement that treats all species as equals, not subjects, and we invite any civilization in the galaxy that values true freedom to join us." The applause grew louder. Even some of the skeptical representatives stood and clapped. Carter had not just refused the galaxy's demands. She had challenged them to do better. Within an hour, the alien ambassadors had left Earth. Within a day, the economic sanctions began. 3 human colonies lost power as energy shipments were cut off. Trade routes to Earth were blocked by Concordat ships. Prices for essential goods skyrocketed as supply chains were disrupted. Lisa watched the news reports with a heavy heart. People were suffering because of her decision at the Grand Conclave. Children on the outer colonies were going cold at night. Medical supplies were running low on some stations. She went to President Carter and offered to resign, to give Earth someone to blame to perhaps ease the pressure. Carter refused. "You showed us the truth, Commander. What we do with that truth is our choice, not yours alone. Besides, something interesting is happening. She showed Lisa a series of encrypted messages that had arrived at secure government channels. The first was from the Nathari, the species whose ambassador had warned Lisa in the corridor. Their message was brief. "We signed the Concordat 50 years ago. Our worlds are now resource farms for the major powers. We cannot help you publicly, but we provide this intelligence on Concordat enforcement methods. Use it wisely." More messages followed over the next week. The Trill, an insectoid species from the galactic south, revealed they had nearly rejected the treaty themselves, but were threatened with military action against their breeding worlds. The Orani, beings of living crystals similar to but distinct from the Vaxari, admitted they had been searching for years for a species brave enough to challenge the established order. Within 2 weeks, 12 species had made secret contact with Earth. All of them were victims or potential victims of the Concordat. All of them wanted something different, but lacked the courage or strength to stand alone. Now Earth had shown them it was possible to say no. President Carter assembled a small team to coordinate with these secret allies. Lisa was appointed as special envoy, her new mission to build bridges with species who shared Earth's concerns. She began planning a trip to meet these representatives in person, away from the watching eyes of the major powers. But first, Earth had to survive the pressure campaign. Admiral Jake Morrison, commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, implemented a defensive strategy he called the Distributed Shield. Instead of concentrating ships at Earth, he spread them across every human colony, every trade route, every vulnerable location. The message was clear. If the Concordat wanted to hurt humanity, they would have to strike everywhere at once. The strategy worked because the major powers were not unified in their response. The Vaxari wanted immediate military action. The Solinth preferred economic strangulation. The Krell Dominion surprisingly advocated for negotiation, concerned that open war might expose their own violations of past treaties. While the major powers argued among themselves, Earth and its secret allies prepared for what came next. They could not win a military conflict against the Concordat, but they did not need to win. They just needed to survive long enough to offer the galaxy a real choice. Lisa prepared for her journey to meet the resistance. She knew the risks. If the Concordat discovered these meetings, they could accuse Earth of forming a military alliance, giving them justification for attack. But doing nothing meant accepting defeat. Before she left, Lisa visited her hometown one last time. She walked through streets she had known since childhood, seeing them differently now. These ordinary places, these simple lives, they were what she was fighting for. Not glory or power, but the right of humans to live freely, to make their own mistakes, to forge their own path among the stars. Her mother met her at the old house on the hill. "I saw what you did at the conclave," she said. "Your father would be proud." Lisa's father had been a soldier, killed in one of Earth's last wars before first contact with aliens. He had fought for freedom then, in a different way, on a smaller scale. Now Lisa carried that fight to the galaxy itself. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," Lisa admitted. Her mother took her hand. "You gave us a choice. That is all anyone can ask." The meeting location was a forgotten mining station in unclaimed space, far from any major trade route or patrol area. Lisa arrived with only a small security detail, traveling on a civilian transport to avoid attracting attention. She had told no one except President Carter and Admiral Morrison about this trip. If the Concordat found out, it could mean war. The station was old, built by a species that had gone extinct 2,000 years ago. Its corridors were dark and cold, its life support systems barely functional. But it was private, and right now privacy was worth more than comfort. Lisa entered the main chamber and found she was not alone. 12 representatives waited for her, each from a different species, each risking everything by being here. The Nathari ambassador who had warned her stood near the entrance. A Trill delegate, her insectoid features hidden behind an environmental suit, occupied a corner. The Orani representative glowed softly in the darkness, providing the only real light in the room. "Thank you for coming," Lisa began. "I know what you are risking." The Nathari ambassador stepped forward. His name was Kree, and his voice carried the weight of years of suffering. "We have waited long for someone to stand against the Concordat. Our world signed the treaty 5 decades ago. We thought it would bring peace and prosperity. Instead, it brought chains we could not see until they were locked tight."
He pulled up a holographic display showing Netheri worlds.
Before the Concordat, we controlled our own resources, our own trade, our own future. Now we mine our own minerals and sell them at prices the Central Authority sets. We grow our own food and watch it shipped to other worlds while our people go hungry. We research new technology and must submit it for approval, which never comes if it might give us an advantage. A Trill representative spoke next, her voice translated through her suit's speakers. We signed because they threatened our breeding worlds. The Krell Dominion showed us projections of what their weapons could do to our nurseries. We had no choice. But you did have a choice, another voice said. Lisa turned to see a delegate she did not recognize, a being that looked almost human but with skin that shimmered like oil on water. My people, the Irani, we had a choice. We chose wrong. We thought cooperation meant survival. Now we know it meant submission. For hours, the representatives shared their stories. Each one was different in details but identical in pattern. The Concordat had promised protection, prosperity, and peace. It had delivered control, exploitation, and fear. Species that once governed themselves now took orders from the Central Authority. Worlds that once thrived now served as resource colonies. Cultures that once flourished were being slowly erased, replaced with a homogenized galactic culture approved by the major powers. Why did no one speak up before? Lisa asked, Cree answered. Because we were alone. The Concordat separated us, made us compete against each other for scraps from the table. Any species that complained was labeled as troublemakers, cut off from trade, isolated until they fell back in line. We survived by keeping our heads down and hoping things would improve. They never did. But Earth stood up, the Irani representative said. Earth saw the trap and rejected it publicly in front of the entire galaxy. You gave us hope that resistance was possible. Lisa felt the weight of that hope pressing down on her. We need more than hope. We need a plan. The Concordat is pressuring Earth right now. They have cut our trade routes and stationed warships near our colonies. It is only a matter of time before they escalate. Then we must show the galaxy that Earth is not alone, Cree said. He looked around the chamber at the other representatives. We cannot oppose the Concordat openly, not yet. But we can support Earth in secret. Intelligence, resources, safe passage through our territories. And we need a new treaty, Lisa added. President Carter promised the galaxy an alternative to the Concordat. We need to deliver it. Over the next 3 days, the group worked together to draft what they called the Covenant of Free Worlds. It was nothing like the Universal Concordat, where the Concordat was 6,000 pages of complex clauses and hidden requirements. The Covenant was short and clear. Its principles were simple. Mutual defense without occupation, trade without exploitation, cooperation without surrender. Every signatory retained complete sovereignty. There was no central authority to enforce compliance, only voluntary agreements backed by mutual interest and respect. The major powers will call this weak, the Trill representative observed. They will say without enforcement species will cheat and fight. Let them say that, Lisa replied. We will prove them wrong by succeeding where they failed. Real peace does not require force. It requires trust. When the covenant was complete, each representative took a copy back to their governments. Most could not sign it publicly, not yet. But they could share it with their people, let the ideas spread, plant seeds of resistance across the galaxy. Lisa returned to Earth to find the situation had grown worse. Captain Danny Price and Commander Sophie Blake were leading a Terran task force to New Horizons Station, one of humanity's largest colonies. The Krell Dominion had sent a fleet to blockade the system, demanding the colony submit to Concordat inspection of its military facilities. Lisa rushed to join Admiral Morrison in the command center as they monitored the situation. On the main screen, she could see both fleets facing each other across empty space. The Krell ships were larger, more advanced, and far more numerous. The human ships looked small and fragile by comparison. Captain Price, what is your status? Morrison asked. Danny's voice came through calm and steady despite the tension. We have positioned ourselves between the Krell fleet and the civilian stations. We are not moving. They are powering weapons, Sophie reported. If they fire, we cannot stop them all. Lisa watched the screen, her heart pounding. This was the moment she had feared since the Grand Conclave. Her refusal to sign had led to this confrontation. If the Krell fired, if people died, it would be her fault. But the Krell did not fire. Minutes passed, then hours. The two fleets remained frozen in place, neither willing to make the first aggressive move. Lisa realized what was happening. The Krell could destroy the human ships easily, but doing so would make them the aggressors. It would prove that the Concordat was not about peace but about forcing compliance. The standoff lasted 6 days. During that time, news of the confrontation spread across the galaxy. Independent media outlets covered the story constantly. Citizens of dozens of species watched and waited to see what would happen. Some called for Earth to surrender. Others began asking uncomfortable questions about why the Concordat needed military force to maintain peace. On the 7th day, the Krell fleet withdrew. They claimed it was a tactical reassessment, but everyone understood the truth. They had blinked first. They could not fire without revealing their true nature, and they were not ready for that revelation. Captain Price and Commander Blake brought their ships home as heroes. President Carter held a ceremony honoring their courage, but Lisa knew the truth. They had not won a victory. They had simply survived one confrontation. More would come, but something had changed. The secret alliance of the free worlds was growing stronger. More species were making quiet contact with Earth. The Covenant was spreading through unofficial channels, being read and discussed on worlds across the galaxy. The major powers still controlled the official diplomatic channels, but they no longer controlled the conversation. Lisa met with President Carter to discuss their next move. "We have momentum," Carter said, "but momentum is not enough. We need to take this public. We need to show the galaxy there is a real alternative to the Concordat. If we go public, the major powers will have to respond," Lisa warned. "They cannot let a rival treaty gain legitimacy." "I know," Carter replied, "but hiding accomplishes nothing. We either stand up for what we believe or we might as well have signed the Concordat in the first place." Lisa thought about Kree and the Netheri, suffering under Concordat control for 50 years. She thought about the Trill, forced to sign under threat to their children. She thought about all the species still trapped, still hoping someone would offer them a way out. "Then we go public," Lisa agreed. "We show them what real peace looks like." President Carter made the announcement from the steps of the Terran Assembly Building, with Lisa standing beside her. Cameras from every human network recorded the moment, and within minutes, the feed was being broadcast across the galaxy through independent media channels that the Concordat did not control. "Today, Earth presents an alternative to the Universal Concordat," Carter began. "We call it the Covenant of Free Worlds. It is a framework for cooperation that respects the sovereignty of every species, that promotes trade without exploitation, and that offers mutual defense without occupation. We invite any civilization that values genuine freedom to examine this document and consider joining us." The reaction was immediate and fierce. The Vaxari ambassador released a statement within the hour, calling the Covenant a dangerous document written by an inexperienced species that threatens galactic stability. The Solanth Empire imposed additional trade restrictions on Earth, cutting off access to rare minerals needed for advanced ship construction. The Krell Dominion mobilized 3 more fleets and positioned them near human space. But other voices began to speak as well. On the Nethari homeworld, protests erupted demanding their government review the Covenant. Trill citizens organized demonstrations calling for renegotiation of their Concordat membership. Even on Vaxari colony worlds, dissidents began questioning why their leadership opposed a treaty that seemed to offer everything the Concordat had promised, but never delivered. The major powers tried to suppress these movements. News outlets that covered the protests were shut down. Protesters were arrested. Public discussion of the Covenant was banned on dozens of worlds. But the major powers had forgotten something important about information. Once released, it could not be contained. Lisa watched the galaxy's response from the command center at Terran Defense Headquarters. Reports flooded in from intelligence sources, from secret allies, from ordinary citizens across dozens of species, who sent messages of support through encrypted channels. The Covenant was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. "We have a problem," Admiral Morrison said, pulling up a tactical display. "The Concordat is organizing a joint military exercise near the Epsilon system. 20 ships from 5 different species all running combat drills in an area that just happens to be right next to one of our colonies." Lisa studied the display. Epsilon Station was a joint human-Trill agricultural colony, one of the few places where Earth had established formal cooperation with another species before the Concordat crisis. It was home to 50,000 humans and 30,000 trill, growing food that supplied both species. "They are sending a message," Lisa said. "Sign the Concordat or we will demonstrate what our combined forces can do." "Captain Amy Chen is commanding the defense platform at Epsilon," Morrison continued. "She has 3 patrol ships in the station's defensive systems. Against 20 Concordat vessels, she has no chance." President Carter joined them, having finished her public appearances for the day. She looked tired but determined. "What are our options?" "We can evacuate Epsilon," Morrison suggested. "Get the civilians out before the situation escalates." "That would be admitting defeat," Lisa countered. "It would prove the Concordat right, that we cannot protect our own people." "Then we reinforce Epsilon," Carter decided. "Send everything we can spare. If the Concordat wants a demonstration of force, let them see that we will not be intimidated." Over the next 48 hours, Earth assembled a defense fleet at Epsilon. It was still outnumbered, still outgunned, but it sent a message. Humanity would defend its colonies, its people, its freedom. Captain Chen positioned her ships around the civilian station, making it clear that any attack would kill thousands of innocent people. The Concordat fleet arrived right on schedule. 20 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. But something unexpected happened. 3 Trill warships appeared alongside them, but instead of joining the Concordat formation, they moved toward the human defensive position. Lisa watched in disbelief as the Trill ships took up positions alongside the human vessels. A communication came through from the lead Trill captain. "This is our colony too. We will defend it." The Concordat fleet commander demanded the Trill ships fall back. The Trill refused. Officially, they were protecting Trill citizens on the station. Unofficially, everyone understood what this meant. The Trill government, while still publicly supporting the Concordat, was willing to defend a free world's colony. More ships began arriving over the following days. A transport from the Netheri brought supplies and medical equipment. 2 Irani science vessels took up positions near the station, claiming they were conducting research but clearly adding to the defensive presence. Even species that had not made contact with Earth before sent ships. Not military vessels, but civilian craft carrying messages of support. The Concordat fleet found itself facing not just Earth's defense force, but a coalition of species that had come together voluntarily. The military advantage the Concordat enjoyed meant nothing if they could not use it without appearing as aggressors in front of the entire galaxy. For 3 weeks, the 2 sides remained frozen in place. Diplomatic channels overflowed with threats, demands, and desperate attempts at negotiation. The situation was a powder keg waiting for a single spark to explode into galactic war. Lisa used the time to gather intelligence. Her network of contacts across the galaxy fed her information about internal divisions within Concordat governments. She discovered that many species were themselves split on how to handle Earth. Military leaders wanted decisive action. Business interests feared war would disrupt trade. Common citizens increasingly questioned why their governments opposed a treaty that seemed reasonable. She also uncovered evidence of corruption. Financial records showed that the major powers profiting most from the Concordat were also the ones pushing hardest for military action against Earth. The Faxari Collective received 70% of the rare minerals mined from Netheri worlds. The Solinth Empire controlled trade routes that charged smaller species triple the rates major powers paid. The Krell Dominion held patents on technology that other species had developed, but were forced to share under Concordat rules. Lisa brought this evidence to President Carter. This is why they oppose the Covenant so strongly. They are not defending peace. They are defending profit. Can we prove this? Carter asked. We have the financial records. We have testimony from species being exploited. We have documentation of Concordat officials taking bribes to favor certain species over others. Then we need to make this public, Carter decided, not through official channels. They control those. We leak it to independent journalists, to citizen media, to anyone who will listen. The information began spreading within days. It did not come from Earth officially. It came from anonymous sources, from whistleblowers, from journalists on a dozen different worlds who suddenly had access to documents they had been searching for years to find. The major powers tried to suppress the stories, but they were fighting a losing battle. Every time they shut down one outlet, 3 more published the information. Public opinion across the galaxy began to shift. Protests that had been small and scattered became massive movements. On the Vaxari homeworld, millions marched demanding their government justify the economic exploitation. Solinth citizens organized strikes shutting down trade routes. The Krell Dominion faced challenges to its ruling council from reform factions. At Epsilon Station, the standoff continued, but its nature was changing. What had begun as a military confrontation had become a symbol of resistance. More species sent ships not to fight but to bear witness. If the Concordat attacked now, they would do so in front of the entire galaxy with undeniable proof that they were willing to kill civilians to maintain their... Control Captain Chen reported that the Concordat fleet was starting to show signs of uncertainty. Ships that had been in tight formation were spreading out. Communication between vessels had decreased. Some ships had even powered down their weapons. President Carter saw the opportunity. We need to offer them a way out. A chance to step back without appearing to surrender. She proposed a summit, but not between governments alone. She invited civilian delegations, cultural representatives, business leaders, and academics from every species to gather on Earth. It would not be an official diplomatic event. It would be a people's summit, a chance for regular citizens to discuss what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. The major powers attempted to forbid their citizens from attending. Thousands came anyway. They came in personal ships on commercial transports, finding any way they could to reach Earth. They came because they wanted something different, something better than what the Concordat had given them. Lisa watched the ships arrive, filling Earth's orbital space with vessels from across the galaxy. She had refused to sign a treaty at the Grand Conclave 6 months ago. Now the galaxy was coming to Earth to find out what she had seen that they had missed. The Terran summit began on a clear autumn morning in Geneva. Unlike the Grand Conclave's sterile conference halls, this gathering took place across multiple locations on Earth. Delegates visited human cities and wilderness preserves. They toured historical sites and research facilities. They ate at local restaurants and walked through public parks. President Carter wanted them to see Earth not as a government, but as a living world where different cultures had learned to coexist without erasing their individual identities. Lisa served as one of the primary coordinators, helping delegates navigate the chaos of having thousands of beings from dozens of species trying to communicate and find common ground. There were no formal protocols, no assigned seating, no predetermined agenda. Working groups formed naturally around shared interests. Scientists discussed research collaboration. Business leaders negotiated fair trade frameworks. Military officers, including some who had faced each other at Epsilon Station, talked about mutual defense without hegemony. The breakthrough began in an unlikely place. Ambassador Eli Grant, a human diplomat working with the Irani delegation, was having coffee with 3 other representatives in a small cafe in Geneva when someone asked a simple question. What if we stopped trying to create one treaty and instead created a framework for many treaties? The idea was revolutionary in its simplicity. The Universal Concordat had failed because it tried to force every species into the same agreement, regardless of their individual needs or concerns. What if instead, they created a system that allowed for multiple agreements at different levels? Species could join defensive pacts without surrendering sovereignty. They could establish trade unions without central control. They could cooperate on research without mandatory sharing of all technology. It would be messy, one of the Irani delegates observed. Complicated, requiring constant negotiation. But it would be flexible, Eli replied. Voluntary, respectful of each species' autonomy. It would be real peace, the Netheri representative added. Not forced order. Word of the idea spread quickly through the summit. Working groups began, adapting it, refining it, testing it against different scenarios. Within days, the framework had evolved into something substantial. It was not a single treaty, but a declaration of principles that would govern how species interacted with each other. The Declaration of Sovereign Peace, as it came to be called, established that all cooperation must be voluntary, that no species would be forced to join any agreement against their will, that exploitation of smaller civilizations by larger ones was forbidden, and that any species could withdraw from any agreement without punishment. It was everything the Concordat was not, but there was a problem. For the declaration to have legitimacy, It needed signatories, major powers, species with influence and authority. Lisa knew that the Vaxari, Solanth, and Krell would never sign. But there were other influential civilizations, ones that had been quiet during the Concordat debate, watching and waiting to see which way the galaxy would turn. She reached out to Ambassador Chen Park of the hegemony of Jin, a powerful civilization that controlled a significant portion of the galactic south. The Jin had remained neutral throughout the crisis, signing the Concordat but not actively enforcing it. Chen Park agreed to meet with Lisa privately. "Why should the Jin support this declaration?" Chen Park asked bluntly. "The Concordat gives us stability, trade, security. It gives you the illusion of those things," Lisa replied. She pulled up the financial records she had gathered. "But look at what you are actually paying for that stability. Your trade routes are controlled by the Solanth. Your military research requires Krell approval. Your colonies cannot expand without Vaxari permission. You are a major power, but you are still on a leash." Chen Park studied the data for a long time. "You are asking the Jin to take a significant risk. If the Concordat collapses and is replaced by chaos, we lose everything. You are also asking what you gain if it succeeds," Lisa countered. "True independence, fair trade, the ability to govern your own people without external interference. Is that not worth the risk?" 2 days later, the hegemony of Jin announced they would sign the Declaration of Sovereign Peace. Their decision shocked the galaxy. Within hours, 6 more major civilizations followed their lead. The momentum had shifted. Species that had been afraid to oppose the Concordat now had cover to do so. The Vaxari ambassador on Earth made a final, desperate attempt to stop the movement. He appeared at a press conference and presented evidence that Earth had been developing prohibited weapons technology. He demanded immediate inspection of all human military facilities and threatened military action if Earth refused. President Carter responded in a broadcast that afternoon. "We will agree to inspections of our military facilities under one condition. The Vaxari must submit to equal inspection of their own installations. We will open our doors if they open theirs." The Vaxari ambassador refused, claiming it would violate their sovereignty. Carter's response was broadcast across every network. "Then you understand exactly why we refused your treaty." The hypocrisy was undeniable. The major powers demanded transparency from others while refusing to submit to the same standards themselves. The revelation destroyed what remained of the Concordat's moral authority. Species that had supported it out of fear or obligation began publicly questioning their government's positions. On the final day of the summit, 63 species gathered in Geneva to sign the Declaration of Sovereign Peace. 18 of them were former Concordat members, including the hegemony of Jin and several other major civilizations. The Nathari signed with tears of joy streaming down Kree's reptilian face. The Trill delegation sang a traditional song of liberation. The Irani representative glowed so brightly that the ceremony had to pause while cameras adjusted to the light. Lisa watched from the side of the stage as species after species added their marks to the holographic document. This was nothing like the Grand Conclave. There was no grandeur, no formal speeches about galactic unity. Instead, there was genuine emotion, real hope, and the messy, beautiful chaos of beings from across the galaxy, choosing freedom over security. When the ceremony ended, President Carter found Lisa in the crowd. "You started this 6 months ago when you walked out of the Grand Conclave. Look at what it became." "I just refused to sign a bad treaty," Lisa replied. "You did more than that," Carter said. "You gave the galaxy permission to ask questions, to demand better, to believe that change was possible. That is what leadership looks like." The Vaxari, Solanth, and Krell did not sign the declaration. They issued a joint statement condemning it as illegal and threatening consequences for any species that supported it. But their threats rang hollow. 3 months later, the Universal Concordat quietly dissolved, unable to maintain legitimacy without the support of dozens of species that had left to join the Free Worlds movement. The major powers adapted, as powerful civilizations always do. They found they could still thrive in the new system, just without the dominance they had previously enjoyed. Trade routes reopened under negotiated agreements. Defensive pacts formed voluntarily. Research cooperation flourished without mandatory technology sharing. Lisa Morgan received a promotion to captain and was given command of humanity's first deep space exploration vessel, the Pathfinder. As she prepared for departure on a mission to chart unexplored regions of the galaxy, she received a message from Kree. "The Nethari people have overthrown the government that signed the Concordat," the message read. "We are rebuilding as a free civilization. Our children will grow up with sovereignty we thought we had lost forever. We owe this to Earth, to you, to everyone who had the courage to say no when the galaxy demanded yes. Thank you for showing us it was possible." Lisa stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder as it prepared to leave Earth orbit. Through the view screen, she could see her homeworld below, blue and green and alive. Beyond it, the galaxy waited, full of species learning to coexist without coercion, to cooperate without domination, to find peace without surrender. She thought back to that moment at the Grand Conclave when she had stepped away from the holographic treaty. Everyone had told her she was wrong. Earth was too weak, too new, too insignificant to refuse. But she had looked at those clauses and seen the truth. Real peace could not be forced. Real cooperation required consent. Real freedom meant having the right to say no. The Pathfinder's engines powered up, and the ship began moving away from Earth. Lisa watched her world grow smaller in the view screen. Humanity had changed the galaxy not through military might or technological superiority, but through a simple act of moral courage. One person had refused to accept what everyone else considered inevitable, and that refusal had given others the courage to question, to resist, to demand something better. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, other species were watching Earth's example. Other civilizations were drafting their own declarations, forming their own free alliances, learning that they did not have to accept the galaxy as it was. They could work to make it what it should be. The age of enforced peace was over. The era of earned peace, messy and difficult and real, had begun, and it had started because one human officer had looked at a treaty that promised everything and recognized it.